Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome everyone. So we'll continue our class today after the introduction to Julia High Performance Computing. So previous chapter we discussed how we can squeeze the performance. Okay, you might not need for use it for the what you call for the normal program because the compiler normally takes care. Okay, but if you want to squeeze the performance, then some previous method that presented on previous chapter, you can use that one. Okay, but normally for the first draft of your program, maybe you can use the compiler. Okay. Okay. So now let's see. We are moving on chapter 5, which is asynchronous and task and multi-threading. Okay, so there are two chapters here actually, but we combine because this is almost similar. The first one is task and the next one is multi-threading. Okay, how we can do multi-threading in Julia. Okay, so these are the big topics on Julia parallel computing. So we have asynchronous tasks or core routines. Okay, mainly this is for I/O intensive application. Okay, I/O intensive application. So we have asynchronous I/O, so asynchronous. So you have the feeling. This is not pure multi-threading, but you get the feeling that you are doing parallel computing here. Okay, because for example you have task A, task B. If you remember the OS, so it's similar like that one. So task A doing the I/O intensive like this. Okay, this is I/O operation, for example. Okay, then from there it will switch to B. Okay, then B can run its program. Okay, B can run its program. Okay, so you get the feeling that it run two programs at the same time. Okay, while this one going to asynchronous, the I/O. Okay, and the other task or the other program will do their program. Okay, so this is asynchronous task, but if you have there are two things. Okay, I/O intensive, or the other one is I/O bound or computation bound, or the other one is computation intensive. Okay, like you do multiplication, calculation, okay, addition, subtraction, and so on. Okay, or some logic operation. Okay, so this is computation intensive. Okay, but this one will not be benefit if you are using here. Okay, because this is just in quote unquote pretend to be parallel. Okay, this is will be helpful if you have the I/O intensive application. Then you can switch. Okay, remember that this I/O operation is very long. Okay, rather than you are waiting for A to finish, then you can switch to B. Okay. Then we have multi-threading. So this one, if you remember the SIMD, we have the core 1, core 2, okay, and then this both have access to the shared memory here. Okay, shared memory. Okay, so how we program the thread for C1 and C2. Normally, to be optimum, the number of threads should be equal to the number of physical cores. Okay, not logical but physical cores. Okay, because also we are using the the hyperthreading. Okay, you have, if you run the task manager in Windows or in Linux using HTOP, okay, you can find that they are counting the logical core as well. Okay. Okay, but it's not pure parallel, so it's like simulated. Okay, it's behaving like you can run two instructions at the same time. Okay, that's one hyperthreading. So we are using the thread, okay, and then shared some memory here. Okay, distributed computing is you have core here, and then you have the memory. So that's why you have the distributed memory here. The memory is distributed, so you need to send directly. Okay, you need to have the explicit send and receive operation. Okay, you need to receive explicit send and receive operation. So here we are using the popular one is using the MPI libraries. Okay, we are using the MPI library, message passing interface library. So this is the standard library for cluster computing. Okay, but remember that this one also can be applied for multi-core. So you have the same thing, C1, C2. Okay, this is like shared memory. Okay, the memory, but it has its own memory. Okay, so M1 will be in here. Okay, M2 will have on the different location. Okay, so again, the same thing, you need to have explicit send and receive because the memory is not shared. Okay, the memory is not shared, not like this, cannot like this, which is in which the memory is shared. Okay, so if you have variable A here, core 1 can access A, core 2 can access A. Access means you have read and write operation. Okay, and then come along, we have the GPU computing. So then we have a core here, then you have the memory. Okay, connected to the memory. Okay, and then you have the GPU, and the GPU also sometimes they have the video memory here. Okay, they have the video memory. So you can see here there's two different things. Okay, so the Apple M1 they are using uniform memory, so both the CPU and GPU can access to the same memory, so it will be faster. No need to have the memory copy. Okay, but because this one is discrete GPU, okay, so you need to send the memory to the video memory and vice versa, send back the result to the main memory. Okay, so this is the parallel computing that's supported. So basically, this is more the type of parallel computing that that Julia can can be used. Okay, there are 4 types here: 1, 2, 3, and 4. So basically, this is cover all. Okay, almost cover all. Okay, this is covering all the parallel computing. So Julia, that's why Julia can scale from the small Raspberry Pi until the supercomputers. Okay. Okay, now let's see one by one before we move on. So today we'll discuss these two, inshallah. Okay, so the asynchronous tasks or coroutines. Julia tasks, you have the term here, the task. Okay, allow suspending and resuming computation for I/O. Okay, even handling producer consumer process. If you remember the producer consumer, you produce something, one is producing and one is consuming. Okay, and similar patterns. Okay, so you have the synchronization operation. You need to, if you want to synchronize, you wait, fetch. Okay, and there is some communication. Okay, some communication. So, and then by default, Julia can schedule tasks on several threads. Okay, so tasks, then automatically Julia will schedule into several threads. Okay, so then you can see here you can say that it's like free parallel computing. Okay, so Julia will take care of that thing. But remember that this task is helpful only if you are using you have some intensive IO operation. Okay, multi-threading on the other hand provide the ability to schedule tasks simultaneously on more than one thread or CPU core. Okay, which is, and also shared memory. Okay, and also the multi-threading in Julia is composable. So when multi-threaded function calls another multi-threaded function, you will schedule all the threads globally on available resources without over subscribing. So we'll see the term here, the over subscribing. Okay, so you have a composition. So this one used another function. This one have multi-threading. This one have multi-threading. So Julia will schedule all the threads globally. Okay, we'll schedule all the threads globally. Okay, so distributed computing run multiple Julia process. So here we will have the process again instead of threads, instead of thread or task, we are using process. Remember the process will have its own memory. Okay, so remember that when you visualize the threads, you have memory here, and then you have thread 1, thread 2. You have something they have also local memory. Okay, program and data. Okay, and for process, you have process 1, it has its own program memory. Process 2 also it has its own program memory. So that's why you can see here it needs to be explicit to send, not like this, because on threads you can share in the memory here. Okay. And the distributed standard library provide the capability of remote execution of Julia function. So remote execution means it can it can do what you call, it can remote execute run P2, okay, to receive, okay, instruct P2 to send or receive. Okay, similar with this one. Okay, P1 can send to P2, P2 can send to P1. Okay, vice versa, can receive and can receive. Okay, from here then they have packages, distributed arrays, MPI and elemental. So this is providing the MPI libraries. Okay, because sometimes if you only need your program is embarrassing parallel, you just need to distribute the array A into several several computers, okay, computer 1, computer 2, for example, okay, computer 1, computer 2, then you can use nicely distributed arrays, okay. But if you need to specifically do more fine-tuning operation, then you need to use MPI libraries, okay. So we can have using the MPI send, MPI receive. So this is the basic of the MPI, okay. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so then another one is GPU computing. Okay, the last one is GPU computing, but the Julia GPU compiler provides the ability to run Julia code natively on GPUs, and we can go to this website, Julia GPU.org. I provide the list of capabilities, supported GPUs, related package, and documentation. Okay. Currently, the supported GPU is NVIDIA CUDA, and then we have Intel Xe. Okay, but this one is recently supported, but the one that is mature is this one. Okay, so this one later on we'll go to NVIDIA Deep Learning Library. We'll learn on how to use the NVIDIA card, okay, for accelerated computing. Okay, and AMD GPU is using the experimental. Right. Okay. So today, inshallah, we'll discuss these two. So what is task, how to use task, communication between task, okay, and high performance I/O, okay, how we can use asynchronous programming, okay, to achieve high performance I/O, means that we can serve multiple requests at the same time, okay. Then we have the threads, and then thread safety and synchronization primitives, different from Rust, okay, because Rust prevent data rest, so we need to ensure that it is safe. Okay, there is no you need to provide the synchronization, and as well there's no data race. Okay, you don't want to have data race. Okay, if you run the same program on different time, you produce different result. Okay, you don't want that one. Okay, if you are using Rust, then it will be guaranteed. Okay, but using Julia, then we need to take care some of the programming. Okay. Then we have thread libraries, and so feature of threading. I think this is based on the Julia compiler, which has now have mature 1.6. Okay. Okay. So just to note that on C front we have at least two major one, OpenMP. Okay, and what is the other one is pthreads. Okay. Okay. So this is more finer. Okay, this is more granular. Okay, means that you need to provide more control here, but you have all the flexibility. And here is more like Julia, so you have the high level of abstraction. Okay, on OpenMP. Okay, so I think Julia is more or less is like mimicking the OpenMP. Okay. Okay, now let's move on to concurrent programming with tasks. Okay, so most program in Julia runs on single thread. Okay, so on single processor core. Okay, so you have single thread and single processor core. Okay, and most processing in Julia also synchronous. Okay, A, then B, then C, then A again, maybe, and so on. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Okay, then we will look at the concurrent primitives. Okay, we have the concurrent primitive here. Okay, that make it possible to run parallel or this is the word here, seemingly parallel operation. It looks like it doing parallel operation. Okay, without the flow complexity of shared memory multi-threading. Okay, then we have the term task. When you have the green one here, means this the Julia keyword is a set of instructions that can be suspended and resumed on any point within that set. Okay, so this is similar like function, but there's some difference between task and function. There is no overhead to switching between one task to another, meaning no stack space is reserved for a switch. Okay, and unlike a function that has to finish before control goes back to the caller, a task can be interrupted and control switch to another at many different times during execution. Okay, so basically the different thing is between function, no overhead, okay, and can be interrupted. Okay, task can be interrupted. Okay. Okay, so that's why the task can provide the illusion of having two parallel sequences of instruction running simultaneously on the computers, because as I mentioned earlier, if you have task A, task B, task A run, and then you have here IO operation, long IO operation, then you can switch to B. Okay, you can switch to B. So you have the illusion that A and B is running at the same time. Okay. So only one of this sequence is running on the CPU at any one time, and tasks do not typically take advantage of multiple CPU cores on the machines. Okay, we don't instruct A go to core number 1, B go to core number 2. Okay, but switching between those sequence like A to B, because A doing IO operation, provide the illusion that they are running simultaneously. Okay, and tasks can be interrupted at specified points during execution. For example, it has finished, then it can instruct, okay, I'm finished. Okay, when the code explicitly signals, so you need to explicitly, I have finished reading the IO, I have finished sending the IO. Okay, then it's ready to hand back control to another. Okay, so you can also put here, this is yield, for example, it instruct using yield. Okay, means that I'm ready to give up my CPU and it can run for another task. Okay, then when you signal here, then you can switch to B directly. Okay, and but a supervised scheduler cannot interrupt a task at any arbitrary point in time. So only on specific. So I'm, for example, starting the IO or finishing the IO. Okay, so that's why this is provide the illusion. Okay, it's only good for if you have a IO intensive operation. So a task can signal that it's ready to be interrupted using the yield function. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, A, then put the yield here, signal the yield. Okay, and then it will switch to task B. Okay, and yeah, so any IO effectively done in a task create an opportunity for the task to yield. Okay, so if you have any IO operation, reading or writing into hard drive or what you call network card, for example, then you can provide the asynchronous IO. Okay, using the libuv library. Okay. Okay, so this allows Julia to use separate tasks for all I/O and thus create opportunity for pervasive asynchronous task usage within Julia program. So let's see this one for example. Okay, if you measure the time, okay, remember that this macro is for measuring the time. Okay, time for, you can try this one. Okay, please try this code. It might have different thing, but it will be the same because this is sleep. One means you are sleeping for 1 second. Okay, maybe you have different in this number like, only. Okay. So here, if you see the code means you are sleeping for 5 seconds. Okay, so which is this case. Okay, then you can put the asynchronous macro. This is asynchronous. Okay, create and schedule tasks for all code within its scope. So this is the scope here. Okay, means that all the sleep call happen in separate tasks. Okay, so you have 1 to 5. Okay, and then you have 5 asynchronous sleep. Okay, you have 5 asynchronous sleep. Okay, so you can see the for loop. So this is the for loop. Okay, which is running on the REPL. So this is the REPL. What you call the REPL is this one. Where's my Julia code? Okay, I haven't opened. Yeah, so this Julia, for example. So if you see this one, just try for I in 1 to 5. Okay, then sleep. Okay, 1. Okay, this will be 5 seconds. Okay, where is it? Yeah, so you can see 5 seconds. So the only difference is this one. Okay, and then if you put asynchronous, okay, you do the same thing. Okay, just type like this. You go arrow up and then arrow left. Okay, oops, I need to put here asynchronous. And then it will run all quickly. See, 0.01. Okay, run immediately. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so this it happened completely in the background. Okay, so it happened completely in the background. If you want the for loop to wait and observe the execution of the task started with, we use the sync macro. So we put sync macro here. Okay, all the 5, then we need to have sync macro. Okay, then if you run like that, okay, what will happen? Okay, then it will wait. Okay, so I put here time and then I put here sync. I need to synchronize. Okay, I mean it will wait. Okay, it will wait. So in my case, 1.037, what will happen here? 4 is running at the background. Sorry, not 4, 5 running at the background. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the same thing. Okay, but maybe one is running a bit late. Okay, so then we need to have synchronized. So altogether, this is 1.03581, not 1 second, but you have some additional here, overhead for synchronization, because you need to wait all to finish. Okay, this synchronous macro will force the scope here. This is the scope to synchronize. Okay, so those tasks contain the sleep function call, which enable it to yield. Okay, so sleep function call enable to yield. Okay, means that you can yield, you can run other things, other tasks. So this allows all the tasks to start nearly simultaneously. And as the sleep function does not take any CPU resources, all the tasks also finish at almost the same time. Okay, almost means some may be run a bit late. Okay, so you need to wait for that one. Okay, but it all has the same size, 1 second. Okay. Using sync, the for loop does not return immediately. Okay, and wait for the sleep function to complete. Okay, if you don't have sync, then initiate all the tasks. Okay, initiate all the tasks. Then after that, return. Okay, so that's why you can see in here is only 0.0014 seconds. Okay, five sleeps operation of 1 second. Each run sequentially takes 5 seconds. So sleep again. You can see here this is 5 seconds, but the same 5 then in parallel takes around 1 second. Okay. So the parallelism is somewhat simulated. So while tasks can be interrupted and switched between one another at any time, only one task is running on the CPU. Okay. So then we can see here, we will see the performance benefit only for code that is doing something, but not taking CPU resources. Means is doing this something means I/O. Okay, I/O operation. Okay, waiting for some I/O and also sleeping. Okay. So this pattern is useful for programs that are I/O heavy. Okay, where code spend a lot of time waiting for this or network data or other things. Okay. If we try this pattern on calculation, for example, the sleep, you do calculation, we will see no improvement. That one is better. We are using the threads, okay, so that we can distribute directly to cores. Okay. Why is there's no improvement? Why there's no improvement? Because no opportunity to yield. Okay, means to switch to another task. And even if you could, every task will fully utilize the CPU. That's by showing no improvement in the elapsed time. Okay, so it's the same thing. So if you can see here, if you do the sinusoid, okay, for this is broadcast operation, means your element-wise operation. Okay, it's 1.4 seconds. Okay, and then you do the synchronous and asynchronous here. Okay, means this one we run in asynchronous 50. Okay, 50 sign and random at the same time. Okay, so tasks can be interrupted only when they allow themselves to be. So for like I/O operation and so on, and tasks have to yield in order for the other tasks to run. Okay, I/O and sleep will yield implicitly. Okay, this is one implicitly when waiting for events. Other tasks have to yield explicitly using the yield function. Okay, so we'll see this one later on. Okay, so you can see here there's no performance benefit. Okay, 1.13. This is 1.14. Okay, you can use B time, benchmark time, so that it will run multiple times to have the average. Okay, but you get the point here. There's no improvement. Okay, there's no improvement there. Okay. One particular consideration in this context is the fact that only once you call into a C function, because you can call the C function from Julia, the scheduler can no longer interrupt that C code, although that C is using I/O operation or sleep function, for example. Okay, you have no benefit. Okay, because you are outside Julia now. Okay, here you are outside Julia now. You are go to the C library, so that the scheduler cannot interrupt that code. Okay, the task. Okay. So from Julia perspective, it is a blocking call. Means it will wait until the calling is finished. Okay, so it will wait, sleep for 1 second, and it will wait, then it will return back to Julia. Okay, whereas if you are using the sleep function in Julia, you can run asynchronously. Okay. So let's see here. This one, for example, using SQL. I'm trying this one, but I'm not sure it doesn't work. Maybe this is work for 1.0 something. Okay, but you can read again how to use the SQL function. Okay, you can use the C library This is in Linux, for example, because you have libc. In Windows, I think you are using Microsoft vCRT DLL, okay, dynamic link library. Okay, but the point here is, if you are using this C call, okay, you will not have the performance benefit. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. What is the task life cycle? While tasks are easily created using the async macro, they can also be created directly. Okay, so this is implicit, then you can also explicitly create the task. Okay, you can represent by the task object with no arguments. Okay, so there's no argument here. Okay, whose constructor typically takes a function. This is a constructor that needs to execute in the context of the task. Okay, so for example here, t equal to task, so you are this is task. Okay, this is task, and this is the one that you want. Okay, task runnable at here. Okay, I'll show you what does it mean. Once created, the task can then be passed to Julia schedulers. Okay, this is passing to the Julia scheduler, so it will run here. Okay, and switch to the when appropriate. Okay. So in this case, since you are on the RAPL, which yield often, so when you press enter, then it yields. Okay, the task will begin as soon as it is scheduled. Okay, once scheduled, we see that the status of the task change as well. So means that different from the previous one, we are using the asynchronous macro. Okay, let's see here. We need to have another step. Okay, we want to have more control here. Okay, let's see. T equal to task. Okay, you put here constructor print line hello from task. Okay, you can see task runnable at this location. Okay, then you can see is task started. See, false, the task is not started. Okay, is task done? See, not yet. Okay, because we haven't scheduled, then you need to explicitly schedule the task. Okay, schedule the task, put into scheduler. Okay, we put here. Okay, then it run immediately because it yield. Okay, it yield. Okay, it run in the background. Okay, so is task done when you do the same thing? Okay, started, true, already started. Done, yes, it is done. Okay, then you can see here what is our current task. Okay, yeah, task runnable is at here, this location. Okay. And then you can put here t equal to current task. Okay. Okay. So then we have also the task local storage function. So which allow each task to keep data of its own. Okay. Scope by the life cycle of the task itself. So we can create a variable that only belongs to that task. Okay. So this allows multiple functions running within a task to communicate and store data without using a global value. Okay, this is what you call to prevent data race and so on. Okay, why? Because the task local storage will isolate within the task. Okay, so task local storage x equal to 1. Okay, this is task local storage x equal to 1. Yes, it is true. Okay, this is the same result. Okay. So for example, if we are using the web server, okay, so we have the server listening to one port, okay, listening to one port, then some request, okay, and then some output, okay. There's a request to the web server, whether the directory or something, okay, then it will give you the output, okay. So each request is handled by a separate test. So means that if you have request number 1, request number 2, it can handle task number 1, task number 2, for example. Okay, and it has its own local storage because the request number 1 might be different from request number 2. Okay, so on web page, for example, you are opening the staff directory. Another request is opening the main page, for example. Okay, then you can use the task local storage. Okay, then how do we communicate? So when multiple tasks are running simultaneously, so you can see here, task 1, task 2, it has its own local storage. Okay, you can communicate using channel. Okay, you have the channel here. Okay, you need to provide a channel. Okay, to communicate data and state between them. Okay, you can communicate also the state I'm running, I'm sleeping, and so on. Okay. So a channel is a Julia object that can be used to asynchronously send data from one task to another. Asynchronous means you don't need to wait. Okay, it will just push. Okay, So a channel is created by specifying the type of object it can contain, whether you want the what you call the integers as the status. For example, you want to send the number of tasks, for example, number of requests and so on, and you can put the integer. Okay. If no type is specified, you have the any. Okay. So let's see here. Yeah, so I created, this is the task. Okay, let me create here. Yeah, so let's see, c equal to channel integer 10 means it create the integer channel for 10 number of element is 10. Okay, if you don't specify the type like this, okay, and then you don't specify or put 0, okay, it means it's infinite number, and the type here will be any. If I enter, you can see here, this is any, and 0 means you have the infinite. Okay, you can hold unlimited number of values. Okay, so a channel can be viewed as a pipe. Okay, so you have task 1 and task 2 here. Okay, if you want, you need to specifically put the channel here. Using the same channel, of course, you need to communicate which one you are using. This is C equal to channel. Okay, then channel C. Okay, channel C will be using. Okay, so that you can communicate between T1 and T2. You can take also the same thing. You can put here, mean go to that direction, and you can take here. Okay, if put and take, it will go to that direction. Okay, so value are sent to the channel using the put function and taken using the take function. Okay, put and channel. Remember what is this? This one means you are modifying the value. Okay, the value will be modified. Okay, the argument here will be modified. Similar like you are passing the pointers to the function in C, you can modify the parameters, the input parameters. So the input A, the output also A. It can be modified. Okay, A prime. Similar A, but maybe the value is changed. Okay, similar location of A. Okay, but the value can be changed. Okay, so that's why you have here the exclamation mark here. Okay. The put functional block of the channel is at capacity. Remember that you specify the capacity. If you put here 10, then maximum is 10. Okay. If you have unlimited, then it will be unlimited. Okay. So whether you have bounded arrays or not. Okay, so typically the filing and emptying of the channel is done by different tasks. One is producing, one is consuming. Okay, so that's why you have the producer consumer pattern. The producer will put, consumer will take. Okay. Yeah, so the first task can send the data to another task asynchronously. Okay, so how do we put here? So for example, here we define a function producer that fills values into the provided channels. Okay, then we can create a channel. So what you can see here, they create a channel. This is the function. Okay, so produce C channel. Okay, to the channel. Okay, then you have here start. Okay, put C start and stop here, and you just multiply here. You have the number here, means you have 8. Then sorry, 1 times 2, you have 2. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, then it is important to note that filling of values in the channel occurs in a task that is different from the consuming of values. Okay, so this is channel 1. Okay, and you have producer here. Okay, then you have take, you have put here on one task. Okay, one task. Okay, put into the channel onto the pipe. Okay, task 1. And another one that take here is another task. Okay, so take here, take channel 1, take channel 1. This is another task. Okay, so if you put another take, then it will give you the error. So let's try this one. Okay, where's the, okay, hold on. Yeah, so let's try this one. Okay, oops. Yeah, so hold on. Yeah, here, where is the, yeah, so you can put like this. Okay, create the function and then create the channel and then take. Let's see, I copy paste directly. Okay, see this one, start, take, channel 2, 4, 6, 8. What happened if you take? another one. Okay, then there'll be error because there's no more. Okay, so it's only put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. So we allocate for what is it? Yeah, this is unlimited number. Okay, unlimited number. Okay, so we allocate for unlimited number here. Okay, channel is unlimited number. Okay, so this only put 6. If you take more, then it will have error. Okay, it will have error. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Okay, then let's move on. The crucial feature of channels is that they are iterators, means that can write a for loop over a channel. Okay, this allow the elegant code when working with tasks and channels. So you have channel producer here. Okay, the any maximum is 0 means unlimited. For I in channel, show I. Then you can see it will show it here. Okay. Yeah, means that the procedure consumer example is previously, the values can be consumed via for loop. Okay, you just put show here, show I, it will be consumed. Okay, this loop continue. You can see here for I in channel. You can just put here for I in channel. Then it will know that it's how many what you call, how many elements there on the pipe. Sorry, yeah, on the pipe, on the channel here. How many elements on the channels? Okay, and then the channel we created close implicitly when the task is complete. So this is implicitly closing. Okay, when this end here. Okay. Yeah. So when needed, however, the close channel function can be used to explicitly close a channel. So you also can use close channel. Okay, that means that you are no longer using the channels, so that you cannot produce and consume from the channel. Okay. So the following code shows the asynchronous iteration performed on channels. So this is one performed on channels. So this is a function on consume. Okay, for I in channel, print line got something from the channels. You print there the numbers. Okay, and channel insertion is complete. Okay, create the channel, channel 1, asynchronous consume. Then you put here starting channel iteration. Put channel, you put into the channel 1 and got one from channel. It will consume directly. Okay, and then after that you can close the channel. Okay. So all I/O in Julia is built on top of libuv, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah, so yeah, this is used for all I/O operation, reading and writing to and from this, for networks and terminals. Okay, this library was built for Node.js. Okay, but the Julia task system is easier to use from Julia. So we do not have to write callback function to handle returns from I/O calls. Okay, the code we write appears to be synchronous, straight line code. Under the hood, the calls are made in a non-blocking manner, so it doesn't not wait. Okay, so that's why asynchronous. Not only the current task yielded, so it can signal the other tasks to use. Okay, all IOs multiplex onto a separate operating system thread. Okay, so thereby allowing the IO task to operate simultaneously. Okay. Okay, Julia of course can be used for the case beyond scientific computation. So you can use it also for web server. Okay, so web server by nature is network IO intensive application because you have a request from many users. Okay, so you can use separate tasks to process each request. But however, the model however limited to running the process on one CPU core. Okay, so when scaling up a web server, we won't need to be able to use on all cores. Okay, so we want to have running multiple Julia processes. Okay, so that if you have one request, create one Julia instances. If you have another request, create another one. Okay, but there's one problem here because we need to share the port. Okay. We want to clients to send request to a single port because if you don't put something, for example, you put HTTP localhost. Okay, localhost, by default this one will be on port 80. Okay, so you cannot change this one. So only one process, one port. Okay, so we need to have a port sharing. Okay, so where multiple process can share the same listening ports. Okay, then after that you can do the round robin fashion. Request number 1, request number 2, and then go back. Request number 1, request number 2. If you have 3, request number 1, request number 2, request number 3, and so on. Okay, in the round robin fashion. Okay, every time quantum, then you can switch to another process. Okay, you can use MUX multiplexer. Okay, and we can use reuse address argument. Okay, you can try this one. Okay, it will can try multiple access. Okay, and then it will what you call, you can open one web browser, type HTTP localhost, then it will print this one. Open another browser, okay, type HTTP localhost, and it will print also this one. Okay, it will respond this one. So this is the HTML code here, header one. Okay, and then if you have multiple requests, then you can create multiple process, but it use the same address here. Okay, it use the same address. Okay, for summary, so Julia support asynchronous programming using tasks, and cooperative multiprocessing allows program to do more than one thing at a time while still using a single CPU and following a simple memory usage model. We don't use shared memory. We just use the simple memory usage model. Okay, so more we can have from, you can access from here. Okay, so